walk by, it'll
Man, there's a little bit of team up in there.
hey,
Hey,
look.
look.
Walk by.
It's the control panel.
Lift it up. Kind of.
What now?
What do you need for?
This is the streaming box that's on the camera.
Yeah.
Some of those.
Streamception.
I'm still trying to figure out what I can do.
Yeah, be careful. You're playing with real voltage and amps there. I mean, it's.
Yeah, that's what I have been careful and watched.
Check.
Everything is just
Check.
Don't forget the classic rule.
We need to go deeper.
Always.
So.
That's why everything else is
Those old mechanics.
Check 1, 2. Check. Check.
where the voltage goes.
48
volts.
Take my amplifier apart. He can try to discharge this 2,000 volt capacitor.
Yeah, no thanks.
Just have to go in and keep you with a screwdriver.
Yep.
You know, you should do is just put a speaker. They'll use the real rigger, just put a speaker in there and just play the MP3.
Well, here's the thing. I already have a little MP3 player. Shield on the So, and now 4 seconds a little handset.
It'd be like if you go solid state and then try to use the real rigger.
Yeah.
I mean, it'd be cool.
That's the thing. It would.
I mean, playing on a pinball machine.
So you can control the streaming box with the web interface.
A lot about voltage. You know, soloists take a lot more knock to your ass than you can see.
Check 1, 2.
It's a tiny museum. They get most of their money directly from Sarpy County, and they only have so much grant, of course.
Check 1, 2.
With a Raspberry Pi.
Silly how easily I'm amused right now.
That like sounds cool.
Yeah, at this point.
Hello.
Actually got a guy to put his phone on a line on a J11, and somebody rang in.
It's like 90 volts on those. It's like 44 meters.
All right.
Yeah. It's pretty good amount of.
Aww. Took away my fun. Now.
Now.
He was okay. It's just time was ass. His head fell back. He's dead.
Hopefully they don't suspect all
Okay, I'm done goofing around with the camera. Don't worry, you're being recorded. Oh no. Alright. So we'll try this a little bit different this time. See if different in what way? The volume is better. I'm wearing a mic. George, this is for you. Hopefully you can hear it. Oh, it's May 2013. Welcome to the Omaha Linux Users Group. I'm John Larson, a systems engineer at AIM here in Omaha, Nebraska. You may have noticed that I didn't say AIM Institute. We're now just AIM. So it's our new logo branding. So the whole new world, as somebody had said a few minutes ago. Yeah. Oh boy.
Or wait, no, was it Dazzling Place?
I don't know. I don't know as many Disney songs as you do.
I don't know very many at all.
Hey look, Linux kernel 3.9 is out. There were some file system improvements, some improved ARM system on a chip support, and look, a new architecture, the Synopsys ARC 700. I am not familiar with that architecture. Is anyone? No. You are?
No, no. Sorry. God, no.
Hey, what's going on?
He probably is. What's the cat broken?
You ever heard of the Synopsys ARC 700 architecture? Well, neither have I.
Assume that's another event.
Probably. Fedora 19 Alpha was released. That's out and about now. And Ubuntu 13.04 has been released.
And the most important release. What? Debian 7.0 Wheezy is finally.
Wheezy. Well, that was yesterday, wasn't it?
Yeah.
So I hadn't put it on my slide yet.
Really?
Sorry.
It's really quite nice.
So how long has that been in development?
2 years, 3 months. But it's ready now. So.
Are you sure?
It is a very,
So
very
after Wheezy, what comes after that one? What's the next one?
I don't know, I think it might be Jesse or something.
They don't do alphabetical, they just...
No, they just pick characters from Toy Story.
Characters for what?
Toy Story. Slinky, Squeeze, all the ones are based on that.
I see.
Based on Bruce parents.
I didn't know that.
And once you put the modern version of Firefox on it, which one? Because they're still on ESR.
What was that, Ice Weasel or?
They always use Ice Weasel, but their Ice Weasel is based on like E10 or something, so it's not great. So you need to go to mozilla.debian.net and put the backboard on it.
I'm going to spend a few minutes to talk about something I did over the weekend. Upgrading someone's myth box.
Does it involve like blowing stuff up? Or
Close.
that's Mythbusters?
Dave, I work with here at AIM, his TV tuner started going out and wouldn't record very well. A lot of ghosting and static. But he has cable, so it's not like it's over-the-air issues. So he bought an...
You just see card for it?
Really?
Yeah.
He already bought a new one, unfortunately. Anyway, he bought the card, and since it's a newer hoppage card, the DVB interface had changed. So the kernel would not initialize it properly in that version of Fedora 11. Because it was built, and it was never turned off since the day it was built. So it's been running at his house for that long. It has two 1 terabyte drives in it. There was 2 gig free on each drive. It's full of recordings. It deletes the old ones as it records the new ones. That's what it does. It has a threshold that it will remove. Yes, it does. Yeah. So my challenge was if I could upgrade this system without losing any of the recordings or any of the stored information. The home partition was just merged with root. So I had to back up the MythTV user. And I backed up varlib, MySQL, and the etc folders just to have those. So when I installed, I just formatted root, swap, and boot, and I mounted var video 2, and that was a minimal Fedora 17. Then I upgraded with FedUp to Fedora 18, and I installed Slim and Mate. Mate is the fork of GNOME 2. So it looks just like GNOME 2, right? But there were issues with X by choosing the way I installed it is I choose basic graphics. So it threw the no mode set, the kernel append line. I could not get X running, and it took me an hour to figure that out. It was very frustrating. So I would try Visa, and I'd switch to Intel, and neither one of them would work. I just happened to come across something about that. Then I couldn't get Slim to launch Mate correctly. It kept giving me cannot execute session.
Can you increase the font size? Or make it
Well, it's not a presentation, it's just a document. Sorry.
Shift, Control plus, Control A, How much do you? Keyboard. Actually, doesn't
You don't have to patronize me just because I forgot my glasses.
No, for the people in the back. Okay, so I solved the X issue, and instead of using Mate, I used LXDE, and I had to use GDM at least to get stuff to fire up. So I installed MythTV, and then I found out that MythTV 2.6 will not upgrade anything older than 2.2. So I was a little screwed. So I used VirtualBox to create a Fedora 16 install, did a downgrade of MythTV to 2.4, which will do the upgrade. And then exported I dumped the database and imported it on the new box, and then let it do the upgrade to 2.6. I did the refresh, I played a recording, the sound worked, and I took it over there and installed it. So we'll see if Dave ever watches this, but time on task, 7 hours.
And what, he gave you free burger?
No, I got movie passes
Oh.
and a flight suit. So,
Oh.
yeah, very nice. This kind of fits in with our System D stuff tonight. Every time, so I configured GDM to do the auto login, but it was so fast on the auto login that the user would log in and it would fire up Myth front end before the Myth backend process was even fired up and running. So Myth would come up and say, "Where's your Myth box?" Like it was starting fresh. So I modified the GDM service file in System D to say these processes, it has a list of processes that need to be up before GDM can run, and I threw Myth backend in there, and that took care of it. So that's a fun little thing to learn about System D. Anybody have any Q&A about things that they've done recently?
Just replace Google Reader with tiny RSS.
Tiny RSS.
Yeah.
So what is the
Self-hosted. So you can, you download it, you run it, you've got the server. It's all yours.
so it runs on your web instance?
Yep.
And is there a client for your phone and tablet?
There is. I just have yet to get that running in.
Okay. I switched over to Feedly for myself. So
How do you know if he's going to be around in a year or two or
I
three?
don't.
Yeah.
But then again, look how many people went over there. I mean, a lot. So
I've been working on switching to news ticker for Emacs, but
news over Emacs?
news ticker for Emacs.
News ticker?
Yeah. Versus RSS feeds and displays. You can do anything with Emacs, okay?
Oh, I know. I know.
Why would you want to?
Yes.
Yeah, shh. I go through the court.
George would normally be here to defend an argument, so he's not here.
Well, I mean, I
George
spend
can do
most
it.
of my time in Emacs.
Huh?
I spend most of my time in Emacs.
There you go.
I've
Never touched it.
And move PDF.
I've never
I've learned
touched
how to
Emacs.
exit Emacs.
What?
I've learned how to get out of Emacs.
Control X, Control C.
Go to a.
Hey, that's
I never
really
even got to
familiar.
see it.
Not
I've
even
touched it
process.
before.
Oh, nobody ever deletes things on here.
I can still read it.
It's like a monster logo.
If you call clearing the marks off a whiteboard deleting, you might be a geek.
You'll be happy to know that they're finally ordered a screen for the lab.
Yay, I won't have that
Glare
dot.
coming right at you.
Does anybody use silicon dust HD home run product?
Silicon dust what?
Silicon dust, that's the company.
So the HD home run, what's the difference between the Prime?
Okay, the HD home run, the difference between the home run and home run prime, the cable card prime.
Yeah, Prime.
Ah.
You get all that you subscribe to a cable box.
What did you say?
If-
The difference was, Kev?
Cable card, you can add a cable card to the prime. And that way you get everything that you subscribe to, everything you get on your cable box, you can get on that. And it records 3 channels at once, including 3 premium off box.
Wow.
That Seaton card I have will take cable card and only do 4 channels.
Yeah.
Is that a PCI Express?
See, I can't use that unless I buy another one.
You're not a darky, man. You're 2 decades out.
I still write assembler code. You guys with your fancy
With
dancy
what?
GUI
So nice
card.
with
You
your
don't know what
skins?
similar is.
That's true. We got some new ones
I write the code that makes the whole world sing.
Yeah.
Hey, I can read mix.
Yeah, I remember when I was in college, I wrote code in hex.
Yeah, so would I. It's been a long.
The hell with going through those mnemonics, that takes too long. I just type it in straight hex.
That sounds like you really have to know what you're doing.
Yeah.
There was
It
a
also
thing on
helps
Hackaday about
doing
that recently.
It makes it go
small
really
instructions
fast.
at CPU.
Really.
That's true.
The programs are a lot simpler.
Yeah, I remember doing
Yeah.
that on the M370. I was doing that on the 6502.
On Hackaday recently, there was this guy who posted scans of his code that he wrote for when he was at a college, at a technical school for Chem 1, to do labeling on a line.
Oh, for like a label print?
Yeah, and not even printing, just sticking them on just right. There was an article on that.
Just a little over 10 years ago, we modified the print queue on our mainframe to print gray bar. So we didn't have to pay for green bar paper. We just toned it for us.
Sweet.
Hey, it's easy to read when you've got those blocks. I mean, I'm serious.
What does the bars on the paper do?
It's just
Makes
for
it easier
reading.
to read. It's like moving a ruler down the page as you read.
Yeah. Because it's just alternating.
You
It's
gotta
kind of like
realize-
PHP rows, and you see different colored rows in a PHP
So
table.
much of the IBM mainframe world was brought up with accounting stuff. And if you've got basically a spreadsheet sitting on one of those 132 character wide sheets of paper,
We were buying
it's
cut
really
sheets,
hard to follow
green
that
bar,
stuff down
for
unless
laser
you've got
printers.
something that tells you that you're on the same line.
It was not
You're
cheap.
running your finger across like that.
And just adding a
If you
few
know you're
codes
3
to the
lines below the change in
PostScript
color,
interpreter
you just
output.
So
go
it's like
lines
it's
below.
like
It was
trying to read
awesome.
something that's got both ends of the both ends of the text just
Well,
the
you got
sides of the
customer name over here and account balance over here. They're this far apart.
Except that sometimes
You
they're
gotta
this
keep,
far apart.
if you're just on straight white paper, you're doing this thing. If there's no line and you got a bunch of white space in there, how do you know?
It's like putting grids in a spreadsheet when you print it out.
Yeah.
So when you got green bar, you got like 5 lines per color change, or maybe 1 depending on the type of green bar. There's all different types, but a lot of the stuff we used was about that tall. It was light green and then white.
They tried to
light
make the
green,
text
then
as
white.
small as possible to
Yeah.
save money by
Yeah, because everything was too expensive.
using less
back then.
paper.
I
Because
mean,
when those
people
printers would
stuff
print, it'd be
out
just like,
crazy.
we did print jobs that had sometimes 25,000 sheets of paper.
Yeah, you just watch.
Yeah, you use little wheel cards.
Because the
All
customer
stuff around.
requested a copy, a physical
You
copy.
ever burn yourself on the head? Change the
Luckily
paper?
not, no.
But these high-speed
Burn
printers
yourself on the
were
head,
the size of
paper.
these 2 tables put
Remember,
together,
it gets hot.
5 feet
You
tall.
burn your head?
Burn your hand.
Hand. Oh.
On the head. Oh.
When you open these printers up,
Okay.
it's just like,
It's got a
and you
hearing
close it again.
protection because it's impact.
Yeah.
They have big steel
These
bands.
are carbide steel characters that are just hammered because the paper is spinning by so fast.
The paper just goes like this,
Ow!
like this fast.
Oh man, you should go to some museum.
I'm sure we can
that's
find
got
a
this
video.
stuff.
We can find a
So
video.
where the Ancient History Museum?
Yeah, from back like when I was your
Yeah,
age.
just look on YouTube for a band printer.
Yeah, a chain printer or a
Chain printer, yeah, that too.
drum printers.
Wish I could
I just
remember
threw
a model
one away
number.
not too long
I
ago.
never dealt with the printers.
You threw
I want to say
Dealt with the
1401.
Drives and
130 pounds.
stuff like that. Anyhow.
It didn't work. It didn't work anymore. No, I
That
didn't
sounds like Stone as embarrassing.
Okay, before I forget, Jeff next month is going to talk about KVM. So,
You gonna get Adam to do something on OpenStack and that?
yes.
Cool.
I'm trying to remember who was going to do when. Aaron, you're August?
Okay,
I think I emailed you.
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, August.
Or it was July, I don't remember which. I'm essentially going to be out of town for August. Yeah, I won't be here that time.
So you schedule me when you're not here. That is a vote of confidence.
Well, that means I don't have to do it.
He doesn't want to witness the train wreck.
I've never been a train wreck. It means people have to put my camera thing together.
And somebody other than you has to unlock the door.
Craig can do the door.
Oh.
I got that taken care of.
Question on the HD homework.
I trust him with my kids.
How does it know where to store its recordings? It doesn't cover the drive.
No, it doesn't, you gotta use some, what do you use for recording?
All right,
You gotta use some sort of either software front end for it. You use Net, TV if you want. There's some commercial stuff you can get.
so you gotta have something
Yeah.
pull off of it.
Yeah, it's just a
It doesn't write out, you gotta have something pull off. Okay, so,
It advertises that it's available
okay.
to whatever. And you can put up to it. I'm ashamed to say the only window box in my entire house is a media center. Record stuff. I mean, suck it off of there and blow it from my Mac and transfer it and store it. There's a phone ring.
Back there?
It works real well with it.
Is that from back there?
It's out in the hallway there. This is back there.
Huh.
Yeah.
Someone's trying to call the lab. Oh well, let's just ignore them. Okay. If you remember last May, I kind of went through a few things on System D. Real basic like. Move my mouse. Let's see if my mouse will work all the way over here. All right. So here's our list of System D systems. That's quite a few. Ooh, Red Flag Linux. I've never heard of Parabola or Nix or Chakra. It's a fork of Arch.
It's a free,
So
free only.
is Chakra a fork of Arch too? I guess it's OpenSUSE, Mur, Mandriva, Magia since Magia 2, Frugalware, and Fedora since 15. If you remember, System D is the replacement for init on the system. From what I've read, Red Hat Enterprise Linux 7 will have it as its base going forward. As I talked about last year, some of the commands are essentially systemctl start and then your service stop. You can get a list of services and verify boot up by just by running the systemctl command. Let's see if I can. I don't know why this keyboard's not going to work. Maybe it doesn't like me.
It's one of those super thin laptops.
I move it closer. Oh, hey, look at that. So, systemctl. There's some stuff that's running. This is just the output of running systemctl. So you get to see devices, services, huge pages. There's cups, dbus, console manager. Many, many things. So these tell you what's active, running, listening. So load, active, and sub. 116 loaded units. Pass all to see loaded but inactive units too. So you can do status on specific services to help. Status cups. So last year I complained about you having to do system control status cups.service. So it looks like they've kind of taken care of that with these newer revisions because it took it there. And you notice there's some logging down here, right? That's we'll talk about that a little bit too, because that's probably the biggest change.
Does Bash do autocomplete for that or not?
It could probably be programmed to do so.
I mean, I'm used to Z Shell doing it.
I wouldn't be surprised if they did add it. I was surprised to find out that Yum has autocomplete for package names.
Really?
Yeah, it was by mistake I discovered that. I just started typing and I normally did it and boom. As long as you have, I think the databases for the file lists, at least.
It's under /completion.t.
Okay, so there's a directory of items that you can.
Well, like I said, I'm used to Z shell doing it.
You can probably zoom in. Is that better, Rob?
A little bit. Yeah, it is.
Oh, there it is, right there.
You want to do a RPM dash well, it tells you what package provided that file under bash execution. I think it's F,
Yeah.
and then /etc.
Hold on. Oink, oink,
What?
underscore tab. Tab. Yeah.
So it is systemd that's providing the file.
What OS is this?
This is Fedora 18.
Okay.
So they have version 197 of systemd right now. I think 202 or 201. So enabling a service with enable, oops. And you can disable and prevent manual starts of tasks by symlinking source names to devno. And then you have to do a system control reload. So this reload command, the daemon-reload, is similar to like telnetting from one run level to another, except you're in the same run level. It's like if you were in 3 and you change something and you do telnet 3, it should supposedly restart based upon what you've got.
So it'll look like a reboot without being a reboot.
Kind of, yeah. It's kind of like it's rereading its own configuration.
Yeah, any daemons that should be running will be running, any daemons that should
Yeah.
be running will
Yeah.
not be running.
But the nice thing about systemd is that's malleable. I mean, you can do port-based or socket-based. I think it's port-based stuff. So like if you put SSH on, say, port 23, you don't have to have it running until it detects this traffic on port 23.
That's what XD was for.
Yeah.
Yeah. So this essentially replaces that too. So in other words, you don't have to have the resources running and waiting for all that stuff. It just doesn't. Now, several years ago, I'm trying to remember who it was. I think his name was Tom, who did the port knocking presentation. Am I correct?
Yeah, I told him last time, yeah.
So that was a very similar I wonder if you could re-implement that with systemd to have that pattern come in and it recognize it. Because it'd be pretty simple to do. So one of the new things is journald. And you can replace syslog and rsyslog if you want. Right? It will take care of that for you. For now, if you want to make what journal collects persistent between boots, you have to make a folder. Otherwise, it just discards it. Right? So I've gone ahead and made this folder today as part of working on the presentation. By default, running journal control, it will display a page list, including any logs that have been rotated. So it keeps going for you. which is really nice. So, logs begin 106. So let's go down a few. So this is, I didn't necessarily boot. My machine had been on since this morning. So it's backporting all the stuff that it had collected. Because you notice that the seconds are all the same in the log entry. I'm trying to find when I booted it here in the lab. You'll notice these are bolded. These stand out. That's automatic. Okay?
Anything that says error or
Yeah.
other things that are
Yeah.
supposed to be really.
So error highlighting's in red. Notice and warning will be in bold. That's by default for you.
Well, those errors were in bold, not red.
That could be because of the pager I'm using.
Oh, yeah, that's what
Right. So this is still all the stuff from this morning. So let's go ahead a little bit. Oh, there we go.
Well, there's red.
There's some red there. So that was when I turned on my laptop at 6. According to the documentation, they're supposed to, I think the newer versions will have a divider line to tell you the difference between the old and the new boot. So, allowing runtime journal files to can't see the end of that. Not very good on the wrap. But, see, set font failed, so that's bold versus error opening. So that could be the amount that it assigns as standard error to flag it as red. They have a whole API to work on this stuff too. But it's pretty handy. But there's a lot. It stores more information in here than you think. This is just a view to make it look like syslog. Right?
Oh,
So
you can still parse it with the same stuff?
yeah, pretty much. So there is a live view. So you can do it with the -F. And this is like tailing message log. But it's all the logs at the same time.
Do something on the machine.
So there's
Just
some
log in,
debug
yeah,
stuff.
just
And there's the
log
logging in, yeah.
We'll do the cam.
So it's kind of nifty, right? So what else does it do? That's the debug statement. It does that.
There are some things that skew an awful lot of useless.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, totally, who would need to know that?
C files only since the last boot,
Oh, that's nice.
right? Show errors or worse. So you can dash P, P, P,
-B, -P, error.
I mean, that's a nice short way to do it,
Yeah.
right?
Oh, yeah. That does save a lot of time.
Yeah.
Scrolling and scrolling and
Mhm.
eyes starting to get dark out.
And you can do by date. Now I don't have much date, but you can put in since equals yesterday. It'll show you yesterday's stuff.
So you know something happened over the weekend, you come to Monday morning.
Yes.
You check Saturday from 12:01 p.m. to.
Since this date, but only until this date and time,
Right.
right?
But yeah.
Yeah.
You know something happened Saturday afternoon, you don't know exactly.
Mhm.
You can check from 12:01 p.m. to 6 p.m. on Saturday.
Yeah.
Instead of scrolling through how many pages a log file's file.
Mm-hmm.
Then you
verbose.
See what causes it.
That's what I meant. It stores a heck of a lot more than you'd think. Yeah. That's essentially one line.
Yeah, that's all the objects.
So it's pretty neat.
But in a different.
That's what you use for.
These SQL rights or something.
I don't know.
Make their own.
Well, let's go look.
Parse that out, but with the.
What's part of the file?
I just grab to find the entry and then use that output.
Just says data. Looks like it's compressed.
Is that Dwarf Fortress?
No, it's NetHack. So I mean, that's some pretty cool stuff. I mean, that's a pretty powerful command. And in Fedora 19, this is all the persistent stuff should be turned on. So I'm sure they'll do the same thing for Sense 7, Red Hat 7,
And then send.
and then Sense 7. Yes.
When's that coming out, by the way?
I don't know off the top of my head. I know 6.4 is out.
Advertise their enterprise
Hmm.
stuff like we deliver.
Mm-hmm. So journal control is pretty darn cool. I'm really liking it. I'm going to probably use it more because I've never messed with it until today. So I don't have enough data. Yes?
But why is what I do with graph, do with highlighting? Yeah, that's the more detailed information, it's more structured. But it sounds like it's going to be a lot bigger file.
It could be.
Why don't you go crying back to Slackware?
Now, will I replace syslog with this? Probably not, because I've got a pretty cool system where all my machines at home log to a MySQL database. When my laptop gets home, it'll dump its logs over as well.
I was going to ask about that. How does this handle new and,
You can run both. It doesn't care.
okay, they'll run side by side together.
Mm-hmm.
fine.
They're running both right now.
But to do a replace, does it have a ability to do the RSS log functionality?
I don't remember. I didn't look it up. I think it will provide the same output. I mean, just by running journal CTL, it's the same output as normal message log. But there are a lot of commands that you can throw on the end of it. I mean, all of the stuff that I've been reading has all been blog posts by Leonard about how all this stuff works. And he'll say sysmd for developer, sysmd for administrators. He's up like part 16 or something like that. And they're not short, they are long. There's also a 45-minute video that they did a couple months ago that I haven't had a chance to watch yet. So, something to play with. I just like the fact that it'll report if the process tries to run. It'll tell you kind of why by running the status, and it should log it now too. I'll probably turn that on my machine at home as well. This is where things got busy at work. So I don't have as much, unfortunately. So you can list any failed services. Come on. Hey, look at that. Nothing failed. Whereas earlier, it did.
So you have no failures.
I was having, SendMail was kind of balking at me this morning because I lost my network connection. I had an equipment failure. So I I guess it ran when I booted up down here. Not as much of a complaint. I suppose I could unplug it and see what it does. But I don't think that would necessarily affect that too much, because it would switch to wireless. All right, this is an example of the service file for System D. So you got your description. This is defined as a unit. And here's your service stuff. So here's the environmental file, essentially your config. You must have at least the keygen run before. And then here's your options that you pass from the config file. And then how to reload and kill it. And it's wanted by the multi-user target. It's essentially 3 and above. That's how they define it now, as a multi-user target, right? You'll notice up here, it says after these targets or services. These have to run to satisfy OpenSSH.
That's sort of independence.
Yes, yes.
So currently, you have the SSH daemon, it's not sent to us, that check if it start up automatically. We haven't run SSH keygen yet, it fails, so this will fix that. But
Well, in Cent 6 and 5, it does the keygen on the first time that you run it. But if you're like bringing one over, like if you copy like the pub and the private key over and it doesn't have the right permissions and you try to run it, it might balk and not run. But I've always seen it generate, it always says generating SSH1, SSH2 whenever I start it. And you're talking on Cent 6.
yeah, maybe it's a minimal install.
Yes. I think the minimal install is missing a couple things. Yeah.
It's 100% SSH, that's fine.
He said it was having a problem with it.
I'm talking about the daemon,
Yeah.
Just the daemon?
So am I.
but
So am I.
So it's not running on...
6 minimal, 6 more minimal class 10.
He's right, he does have the client and the server.
Okay.
I mean, actually, they did the other day.
Were you doing a net install or like a kickstart?
Yeah, that was one machine over the network.
Because the kickstart, you know, you can define some packages and it may not be included in that list.
I've had some really weird bash problems as well.
Where are you downloading your ISOs?
Probably Lincoln.
Okay.
.ul, but I checked them.
Okay.
Some of it was not.
That's my favorite CPM here.
So, in my Myth TV thing this weekend, in here, or it had one that just said depends upon, if I remember correctly. Let's take a look. Lib, user lib, system D, system. Now this one shows conflicts as well as after these. So on the myth box, I'd suck myth backend before GDM, or so that it doesn't fire this off until after.
Maybe FT1.1 servers conflicts on and the afterline.
Right. So in other words, don't run this if these guys are going to be there. So it's waiting for, it wants to know that Plymouth has quit.
And that Giddy is good.
Right.
Okay.
And the thing about systemd and Geddes is that they're dynamically allocated. So if you've ever booted this system up and gone like, well, if you're in X and you do Control F2, there's nothing there. You have to give it a few seconds, and then it'll figure out that you want one, and it'll fire it up and give it to you. Normally, you switch over to F3, and then you switch back to F2, and then they're both there. But it's dynamic allocation. Yeah.
There are some things that make sense, but it's not
it does get a little frustrating because it's like, dang it, I'm looking for it right now. And
That doesn't take up jack diddle system resources.
Right.
On 100% of the time.
Mhm.
There's no reason for it not to be there.
but if you think about serial consoles, there's a whole section on serial consoles and how to get those to fire up, and dependencies and all that. And that's in his, he talks about that in his blog post. I'm not going to go into it because it's long. Not long from a perspective of these are the commands you run. It's long because there's several paragraphs in between each explaining what's going on. Just so that you're more informed about it. So most of the stuff, there's a few places where the stuff lives. There's libsystemd system, there's userlib systemd system, and then there's another one.
When are they going to merge those?
There is etc systemd system. Okay? Now the reason for the etc one is they want you to change it in here. Don't change the one in userlib or lib. Because in this example, I've created a one called JHL sendmail, and I have included the previous one in it. So all the previous entries from this guy are included in this one. And I've made a change, and I've given it a higher priority with CPU shares. So you can finagle, you can still get the base config. So like if you do an RPM update or yum update, you still have what they want, and you're doing your modifications separate.
And that way, when you do an update through Yellow or whatever your manufacturer is, it doesn't blow away the
Exactly.
because it will jack.
Or it'll make a bunch of RPM news, RPM saves sitting out there. And
That's it.
yeah. So after you do something like this, you do the daemon reload and the restart of the service, and it picks up the new stuff.
If you're like me, you don't want to do an update in the command line, then go to something else.
Yeah. So this is essentially, this is your F5 on your browser.
About
Right
it the
here.
next day, and then all of that stuff is sitting around there, and 3 weeks later, I go, why isn't this working right?
Mm-hmm.
And I can't figure it out.
So how do you find out what's
configuration
merged from different configuration files? Is there a mainline thing that tells you the actual configuration that's being used?
Well, the system control status on the service should give you some amount of information. So we can actually do this if we'd like.
Yeah.
You know, sendmail isn't the greatest or the hardest thing to mess with, so. Now, oops. This example was originally for Apache, and I was just using it for sendmail as an example. I don't care.
Wow.
What's the normal default? 1024. So I'm elevating that more than 1024. So it says active, running, accepting commands, control group. It's been running for an hour and 12 minutes. So
You want JHL?
that's probably a good idea. So we'll stop. email service. It's probably going to balk at me because I didn't link it anywhere. Oh, look at that. So here's some output. Make aliases to where it ran the previous entries. It doesn't really tell me the CPU height, does it?
Not here.
It's loaded. It is disabled, which means we won't get it on a reboot. I don't know how you would determine if it was changed. I suppose there's a extended status. Oh, what was it? Setting CPU shares in a unit file will cause the specific service to get its own control group in the CPU hierarchy, even if CPU is not included in the default controllers. So, what if we do CPU lowercase? So it's both of them, because this one fired off this one, because it included it. I don't know. I wasn't prepared for that question, and I can't really find out how to display it. Analyzing resource usage. System D CG top. Fortunately, that's always just going to change on us. I wonder if I can. Oh, it just keeps redrawing the page. It's just scrolling the output.
Scroll off.
Well,
No, it's up there.
Yeah.
batch mode, iteration, delay.
Batch and just give me an output.
Yeah. So order by CPU load. Order of number of tasks in control group. Suppose that wouldn't really.
That scared the banking guy. The way that into the group.
Yeah, but you notice that that's not. This is all by tasks now, so this isn't changing. Really.
It's doing it, yes. Doesn't let you change the interval.
No.
Is that an option in the cache I?
Order by disk load. Keys. Short.
Dash D.
Okay.
Set.
And depth. Tree traversal depth. Dash D. H space immediately refresh. Q terminates. But you saw me press Q. That didn't seem to do much. Sort control groups, path, tasks, CPU load, memory usage. Plus or minus increase or decrease. That's nice. So there's a decrease. Oh, I was in batch. That's why it wouldn't do anything. Wow, I kept typing a lot, didn't I?
Each plus would have a second, 500 milliseconds, right?
Does anybody know what cronny is? You seen that before?
It's a Chrome replacement.
It's that's the replacement for NTP.
With NTP.
Oh, really?
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because there's cron right there.
Yeah.
Well, it makes sense. I mean, Chrome is
I think it was more
Oh, no.
easier on things where the network wasn't there. You remember how if you had it enabled, it would sit there and wait for a network forever?
Yeah. What,
So it's
I
kind of like,
think they've just modified
NTP is really good.
I think there's more options on it.
why do they make less when they have?
We can look at it in a second. How about we?
What is there a typo?
Something stupid.
Do you have the C groups directly in your web mounted? You know, like /C groups?
I don't know.
Has anybody, do you use C groups a lot?
I've used it, but I was.
I haven't used them at all
I was wondering if that's why this doesn't work, like.
because it's not showing it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
because you don't have it mounted at all.
C groups is pretty powerful stuff.
No, there's. That's the next thing I want to get into is to mess with the C groups, the control groups.
For an assistant administrator, especially if you're in a dynamic environment.
Mm-hmm.
Network servers, those-
How's this for fun?
Really?
Nope. I mean, that's all. There's a lot more to it. It didn't used to be its own command. There's all these extra stuff that you had to run. But now it's
Probably
now
just
it's a
like
script.
Bash.
Yeah. Yeah. See, it's they've compiled it. I mean, it used to be. Yeah, it used to be.
I would think it would be root.
So. Yeah.
To detect if it's virtual.
Yeah.
Condition virtualization unit.
I wonder if that works if it's running a TV. It's fully virtualized.
Depending upon precisely what you want to detect, is a little more than running a CPU ID instruction and maybe checking a few files in the system proc. Complexity is mostly about knowing the strings to look for and keeping that list up to date.
That's not guaranteed though, I mean, if you're
No.
doing these malicious,
No.
having it red pill you.
Right, exactly. Exactly.
Okay, this-
So, pretty much, where am I going? So there's some links. We should go through the myths for a little bit, because it is pretty funny.
I wasn't laughing about that, I was laughing about something else.
It's monolithic. If you build it with the configurations operational, you will build 69 individual binaries. System B is about speed. Yes, it's fast. It's primarily just a side effect of doing things right. System D's fast boot up is relevant for servers.
Yes.
High availability setups, it's kind of nice to be failed machines come back up really fast. System D is incompatible with shell scripts. This is bogus. Then he goes on to explain it. There's some, people think it's difficult, but there's just a little bit more to learn on all of it.
There's always more to learn.
System D was created as a result of the NIH syndrome. This is not true. Before we began working on System D, we were pushing for Canonical's Upstart to be widely adopted. However, we eventually came to the conclusion that its design was inherently flawed at its core. At least in our eyes, most fundamentally, it leaves dependency management to the admin developer instead of solving the hard problem in code. System D is not Unix. That's certainly some truth. It does not contain a single line of code originating from original use.
That sounds like a thing to avoid SEO.
Yeah. System D is only for Linux and not nice to BSD. Completely wrong. The BSD folks are pretty much uninterested in System D.
Yeah.
So yeah, there's a whole bunch of things. But the journal stuff, I'm going to start using a bit more.
It looks, I was just real quick reading the man page online, and it looks like it does cryptographic verification of stuff.
Hmm.
And can also export to JSON.
That's nice. Did it, when you say that again about the encryption portion?
Cryptographic, it says something about forward secure sealing in the man page. Have to set up keys and you can verify things, but I don't know if it is cryptographically secure. That's just how I read it.
Interesting. Now,
Saying it requires a key pair,
if some people, it'd be interesting if a lot of people may not know about this feature. Once it gets onto servers, it's sort of a different area. They can't necessarily modify a text file if the log is not text. It's a data file. So it's a little bit of obfuscation.
Makes it a little harder.
And then
It makes it
there's-
harder, but they'll do it.
And then there's that signing thing too, because if it does the signing, that's
Yeah.
easy.
All security,
If it's signed,
all security is making it work so it's
I know.
So every time you increase the time expense, you'll decrease the occurrence.
Mm-hmm.
What I was chuckling about a moment ago was I was on Reddit and somebody posted a link to Urban Dictionary that says that Ubuntu is an ancient African word meaning I can't configure Debian.
Sounds about right.
So here's that talk about socket-activated internet services and OS containers. I mean, when I said he types a lot, that's a lot of stuff.
Wow.
And that's just that article. So,
When I look at the scroll bar, it's about, what is it?
yeah, this is just his blog. So this is just, and all of his blog is like this. It's just pretty much text. There's hardly any pictures in it.
What was supposed to be?
Yes.
NASA's going to be migrating ISS
So,
computers from Windows to Linux.
here's the talk about journal and how to do logging and stuff like that. Here's the JSON output.
Which is nice,
Mm-hmm.
if you like JSON.
So yeah, it's pretty cool.
I got that video game stuck in my head.
We didn't even talk about managing resources.
John, is System D it's like higher level, it's gonna control UDEV, it's gonna control HAL.
Yeah, they've essentially merged UDEV into it, from my understanding.
So, and the reason, just think about that, is talk about security, thinking of the DRM security, and how Ubuntu with the Amazon Prime and some video wouldn't work unless you did some special configurations to HAL. I thought the HAL daemon could go away a long time ago.
It did.
Maybe it's-
It did. And that's
So it's not installed by default in Ubuntu, so you have to install it, and then you have to kind of patch HALs.
yeah. See that when they stopped updating the Flash plugin, we kind of got screwed because it's not getting updated for all the newer stuff. about 2 or 3 weeks ago, Amazon changed the encryption on all their videos.
Well.
So
I
we
mean,
wanted to
Adobe
watch.
Flash was updated at the same time.
Yeah, but they're not updating Flash for Android. They're not updating Flash for Linux. So those two platforms suddenly couldn't play.
Well, I mean, it's, if you roll back to the older version of Flash, it still works. If you update it to the latest version of Flash, it stopped working for a while.
So you should run Flash with the security holes.
Yeah.
Good plan.
I see.
But I mean, you could, on my CentOS boxes, Amazon eventually got it working. Not doing it. On Ubuntu, you got it.
No, I mean, it's working now. But don't look at the box too long, or it might break it again. Sorry.
Okay.
This was
About a year and a half ago, they started piloting the Linux Flash plugin to require SSE2 to start to sell on the CPU.
Mm-hmm.
That's not gonna like something they really plug in only one of like years.
I see.
Yeah, search Google for forward secure stealing. Leonard Pottering had a big Google Plus post about it on the 20th of August. And apparently, when you run the command to set it up, it actually outputs a QR code to the console.
Do I have to put his name in it too?
No, ceiling. Not ceiling, but ceiling is in two.
Oh. All right.
Right there, that's on one.
You spackle that shut. This one?
And apparently what you're supposed to do is run journal CTL space double dash setup dash keys, and it'll set up keys, and it looks, if you scroll down, it looks like it actually outputs a QR code to the console when doing that.
Ha! Really? Wow. In the terminal. I mean, it's blocked. It should work, right?
Wow.
Ha. That's pretty neat. Oh, you want to scan it? Sorry.
Google search for Gen 2 and System D.
What?
Do a Google search for Gen 2 and System D.
Let me guess. No!
No, actually, the second one's actually a really good System D. System D. System D.
I'm thinking of IBM. This one.
Actually, no, talk comparison net system should be just Gen 2 system.
Because I'm signed in.
Oh.
Talk.
Comparison.
You say
Yeah,
talk?
the first one. That's the first
Okay.
one.
What the?
I can understand the risk. It didn't do it for me.
Must be using IE.
Yeah,
No,
Explorer
it's
kind of
Firefox.
I got.
Who's the system administrator?
Look for
No.
size and complexity.
What's that?
Look for size, complexity. There you go. Upstart, 97,000 lines of C code. Debian System 5, init
0.8.
6,000 lines of code roughly. System D, 125,000 lines of C code. 900 files.
Woo!
Yeah. It's your OS now.
I thought that was Emacs.
I'm sure Emacs will work with this.
Of course,
Just give me a
15,075 lines.
Huzzah for International Space Station migrating to Debian.
Debian?
Yep.
Yeah. They're migrating their the workstations on the International Space Station from Windows to Debian. Debian 6.
Yeah. Where's the going to go to?
There's
I'm sorry, I don't know. We're gonna hit the atmosphere, but Gen 2's almost done. I think we get the flags right. We're gonna probably be okay.
Oh, I just figured they switched up. Oh, I don't know, Fedora?
Yeah, I mean every 6 months, yes.
How about another challenge? You want to play around golf with the club and get some lunch? Whoever gets to the club last buys lunch.
Stand by to have your wallet emptied by a tractor beam.
Anything's possible, but probably not that.
Middle of the earth in the land of Shire, there's a great hopping we all admire. Long wooden pipe, fuzzy wooden toes.
Double-legged.
A hobbit hole, and everybody knows him. Bilbo. Bilbo Baggins.
I've seen that on YouTube.
Hobbit hole. Go, Bilbo!
All limit.
Go.
Hey, where are you?
Use your sensors.
No need. I'm already here.
You're there already? I feel like I'm stuck in a black hole.
No worries, I can practice my swing if you need to pull over and take a nap.
Smart ass. I have been and always shall be.
Really?
I had to.
Nice try. You
No, I definitely had.
Not for a second. Obviously, you're by lunch.
Technically, we're not inside yet.
I mean, look at bad lip reading.
I will.
Fascinating.
Okay, so let me end the meeting and then we'll do some more of those. All right, so
Are we gonna do the YouTube
Yes.
40X KCD or something?
yeah, Rob,
Can I present a question?
you may. You want to come up here and present it?
Yeah, since the Jesus out of me.
What?
So that, so if somebody knows arsenic, bash, or shell, well, great.
What was the question you posed it to the group?
There's a whole lot of stuff I don't know, there's some stuff I do.
So,
I know
Then there's
Google.
the other stuff though.
Bilbo.
I know Google.
Do you want the projector?
sure.
Um,
Yeah, old school guy, I still use it. There's a guy on, I forget which one it is, one of the Thompson's Linux.
I run an NTP server and I don't use an NTP. I hate it.
Well, I actually don't run into TV, I go to Eternal Server.
My mail reader technically is a NFTP.
Oh, Emacs does that?
Yes, Emacs even does an NTP. Yes.
It also does IMAP, SSL
Yeah, I
support.
don't mess around with that.
Well, GNU's originally was written for NFTP, but they stuck IMAP and POP3 and whatever you want to do on there.
Well,
Like I said,
that's actually
I
a-
switched
It
to
sounds like Emacs isn't so much a Swiss Army knife as it is a bunch of random tools duct taped together.
I mean,
No, it's an operating
First
system.
thing,
oh, this is just a paragraph, right? So,
Chainsaw and
that's
garden rake
another
duct
thing
taped
I've
together.
been seeing that in Ubuntu too.
It's
that
slightly less
A
elegant.
change to a different,
I mean, I saw what was for you writing, so you can write extensions for it.
maybe I should set it
I
down.
can read this, but can't write it.
Before I forget the cable's there and I walk away with it.
I packed together a quick little.
Okay, so they're just super glued to the garden
I
rake
use a
handle.
program called Penetrator to do file searching, and it's I don't want to have to remember all the different.
You know, this is what bad lip reading taught me is what,
Bad lip reading.
bad lip reading
write on this?
Yes?
Yeah, you can write on
We no longer have a smart board.
Do me a favor and fill in the NEC card. It's just dumb.
it. Do what?
Just fill in the NEC for it.
So I got found bin, bash. I put a -X after it for debugging. And basically, I got
I was thinking about changing.
archaic systems that I had an intake from a merger, and they were heavily infested. So I don't want to just like clone the hard drives, but there's important files on them I have to get, and I have to document it all. So I was tired of robocopy in Windows changing from when, every different version of Windows has a different version of robocopy that can behave completely differently. So I don't want to deal with that, but so I have so say it's these are just folders that I didn't want to bring into the backup. So marker's not working very well.
You're writing too fast for it.
Yeah. So so basically what I need to end up with from the shell script is something that does, I'll just put this in here for now. This I know works. Some guy just now on Stack Overflow says it doesn't.
Stack Overflow? Or SUSE or Stack Overflow?
Serverfault.com.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm RJT, I think, on all of that. Oh, and then there's a, this machine doesn't have a SSD, so it takes a long time. But there's something about preserve. There's a command line flag to rsync that preserves quotes or not preserves it.
Yeah.
I don't remember but I've tried it both ways, and either way it doesn't work, because instead of
How many machines are you dealing with, first of all? I mean, is it worth going through all of this stuff?
well, yeah. I mean, I think it's worthwhile to know what rsync is. I mean,
Well, yeah.
I guess I've always looked at it.
But the problem presented initially was you got a bunch of stuff in a merger and you're trying to get specific files off of specific machines. Like, is it really worth going through all of this kind of stuff to program the way to do it?
Yeah. I mean, it may not be for this particular one, but for the rest of my life, yeah, it's worth it.
What are you trying to preserve?
Oh, it's just some folder hierarchies, but not everything underneath.
But it's
Yeah, I mean,
it's basically because I mean I consider I guess my goal was to have like total recall someday, and if you can't make backups well and move files around quickly and know exactly what you're doing, you're not going to do too well. But it's also just bash scripting. It's because all I'm doing is passing in, what am I doing? This isn't exactly what I'm doing, but something like this.
Yeah, I got a different way of approaching it. How many different file names are you dealing with? Specific
Hundreds
file-
of thousands. I mean, it's the backup is
Is it specific
hundreds of.
directories that you're?
I'm just looking for what kind of commonalities can you get from one machine to another to cut down on the amount of BS you have to deal with. Because if you only have 10 files, I just use fine. And then it sack off arson. But if you got hundreds, thousands of files, that's not going to be very efficient.
Yeah, and it's more about what files to filter out.
Okay, so given directory, you want everything except a couple?
A couple directories in that hierarchy.
You want everything except a few?
Yeah.
Directories?
You can use find to.
Yeah, I guess, yeah.
Take
So
things out.
I could have like application,
Just
you know.
use tar with exclude.
Well, no,
Yeah.
just use, you can use rsync with
Well,
these
it's true.
directories.
You can use exclude, but then I was looking at filter. Filter looks like it's a better option for me.
Well, if you try to just, I hate to say this, if you try using rsync, just build up
Your sync?
rsync, it's a GUI for it.
GRC.
No.
You just run that with some dry runs, that way you can just, it'll show you, what you do. That way you can easily change the parameters around, and it'll give you the command line as actually later on.
Yeah, I mean, I can get the command to
It'll
run.
give you the command line from
Yeah.
whatever you point and click at, and it'll
Yeah.
give you the actual command line for the run.
But-
And that'll speed things up a lot if you got that, yeah.
No, I mean, I know the command to run, but it's a matter of generating that command from within a bash or shell script and have rsync take it. It's something within bash and,
Generate commands.
yes.
Okay, so it's, I guess, so it's quite a quota, it's
Based upon the input into the bash. Essentially, you're passing parameters to bash to do it.
Yes. So I have an array. Oh, forgot the, this is an array in bash, which I've relearned yet again is much better than having a set of strings. I mean, it's better than having everything in a string because it handles quoting a lot better. But what ends up happening is when I pass this into rsync, and this part's really helpful because it tells you a lot more about what's going on.
Right.
But it's appending this tick. I shouldn't say a tick, a single quote. And so, application. Oh, yeah, I forgot that. You gotta have this at the end of the directories. So, what ends up happening is there's it's putting this tick, single quote here, and at the very end, because I'm basically generating a set of name value pairs of -- filter equals a folder name dynamically, and echo doesn't do this. When I echo it out, it echoes out fine, but when I pass it to rsync, it's leaving the single quotes there. And I know there's a bunch of different ways to use rsync. You can have a text file where you're reading the files in,
Yeah, this has
but
nothing with arsync, has to do with,
Loading
doing
and
the
bash.
coding and bash in the actual file.
but what's the difference then when you do echo? When I do that, it doesn't append that. But when I pass it to rsync, it does.
So have you considered using echo to do this? Use echo to pipe to subshell?
And I could, I'd like to just get this,
That's a horrible kludgy way of doing anything.
Well, yeah.
you know, I mean, it's a pretty long rsync command as it is.
So you have a single quote on the whole command, and then double quotes inside the command. Because you have a
No.
single quote on the whole command, take that out and let it figure it out after that. It should. So you have the components you need, have double quote, it should expand correctly.
Well,
There's
I can say this, I mean, everything else is working fine.
Yeah.
There's something weird about doing a
But-
double quote with a $ parameter inside of it.
Sounds like I'm kind of weird.
Yeah.
But
This is something.
let me just see if I,
What happens if you just take those double quotes off the rsync line? Why do you even need them?
yeah, it still doesn't parse it correctly. Sometimes it doesn't seem to make a difference.
Dealing with bar.
You know, I mean, again, it's just, it's mainly,
Yeah. Let's see.
Hey, you're finally on the
Let's see it.
projector.
cat.
I've had it for a little bit.
You guys ever use a HG Mercurial?
That's another.
It's like JIT, but
Like it,
it's on bitbucket.org. They'll give you a private repository for free, whereas at JIT you have to pay. So it's kind of nice.
I live on the
Yeah.
bleeding edge, I don't use source.
But I mean, my
Virtually everything I write is less than one screen in length.
It's not too far.
yeah.
Once you get used to it.
Especially the Imperial was probably was slow to actually
It would take me long to figure out how to use
It
this.
couldn't hold up under the load, so that's why I'm.
For what I do.
Well, I mean, I like.
Not saying that they're not useful.
I like get
If I was writing
Emacs interface.
multi-100,000 line C files again, yeah. Writing shell scripts ad hoc here and there to do one thing or another. Oh.
Give me 1 second, it's 6 pages long.
having trouble reading. Well, I don't know if I.
If I remember, there's this guy that's just really good at doing this stuff. I will try to find
Your call cannot be
where he
completed
was
at
doing
time.
something
Please
very
check
much
your
like
number.
this.
So we got, I
See
hit
if it
forward
applies to
on
what
the
you're
computer.
doing. Send you a link to it.
I tried to
Yeah,
dial it,
that'd be-
And he's also posted
it's
some
auto-completed
book.
from memory, somebody dialed that for it, too.
Because I don't worry about those things.
Your call cannot be completed at dial.
It
Sorry, I'm just still trying to figure did something.
Look, I think Stitch. But then we have to.
Okay. When you have, your exclude line has dash space quote, default user slash quote, and then wrap that up. Why do you have that dash in there?
Oh, hold on.
Well, I mean, that would surprise me.
It's Java. Java runs on everything according to Oracle.
I mean, it runs on Bluetooth.
Man, this is harder when you're typing here and you
Of
can't.
course, last time you tried to learn Java, it was about the same as when I tried to learn Go.
Well,
Don't use quotes in filter, especially with protect arguments.
Yeah.
I had to learn that. That was required.
yeah.
I was saying don't use quotes.
And I tried it both ways, with protect args, without protect args. I tried it exactly how he's talking here.
What version of bash?
3.0. Fall over.
That's because there's very few installations. Mostly financial.
Is this your thread or somebody else's?
This is mine.
Dash
Yeah, on server fault, I'm RJT.
It's from something too.
Yeah, I'm trying.
Still need to work on figuring out how to use XDMS. XDMS is
I just want to get that. I want to figure out how I could use them.
Maybe we should look at it one-on-one in the bar, and then we'll go fast. We don't have to go back and forth between.
Yeah. So maybe I'll just go through what, because this isn't too, so. I guess I'm not 100% certain that it's this single quote here and that single quote there that breaks it.
I would whack those two.
What?
I whack the single quotes, if everything else inside is double quoted. Let that, see what that does.
Yeah, and I've done that.
Okay.
I mean, I don't put this single quote in. So like when I do this echo here, you won't see the single quotes.
Can you just copy what he's got right there?
This is mine.
Oh.
Yeah.
This is my posting. I put on the Stack Overflow.
Well, it works.
So when I echo out this filter, it doesn't put in the single quote on the sides.
Right.
When I pass it to rsync leaves these single quotes on the ends. So if I take that and I paste that into the shell without the single quotes, it works fine. So
So if you set a variable to the single quotes will remove quotes and run it that way. I mean, what you need to do is strip the quote, strip the quotes from the edge. I mean, I was
What he's saying is that there's no single quotes there when you echo it.
Well,
Yeah,
first
no,
of all,
of course not this case.
where is the,
But they are there, so if you set an internal variable into it, will it reserve those quotes, will it as one
Line
entire
8.
line, then
Right.
you that line, the variable.
line 7, you got 4x in?
yeah.
All right.
So,
Then-
just
hold
think of
on,
Perl.
like,
Yeah.
Then you do filter, line A is filter.
Perl latex and mass.
Why does that exclude instead of filter on the inside of the perimeter, you're passing to filter?
Well, originally it's a remnant because I started off with using the exclude parameter to rsync and I changed to
But
filter.
you don't have a variable named filter.
Right here.
It's self-referenced.
Yeah, so initially,
That's a function, yeah, that's a function.
Yeah. Function, not a variable.
no, this is an array.
Yeah, but it's defined as a function.
Right.
But-
Parentheses make a function, not a.
Well, with the equal sign, it doesn't. If there's no equal sign, it would be a function. But regardless of any of that,
Oh, filter? Yeah.
Filter equals something, whatever, filter. Filter's never been defined as you don't have an array element in filter yet.
Correct.
So you can't do an assignment.
It's not C, it's shell.
I know.
So,
That's
I-
material. It's an uninitialized array if you're using it.
and you can do that in shell. It's not C.
It's
not assembler.
to do that.
And I don't know, is this initialized? I'm not really sure.
Of course it is.
So I'm initializing it there to be empty. And then I say filter, and the first time it runs, it's gonna say, there's nothing in here, so this is gonna be empty. But then it's gonna put on as this dash dash filter equals string, which
I have no idea why
should,
you're going through doing it the way you're doing it. But that ain't right. I'll guarantee you that ain't right.
I'll guarantee it runs. I'll guarantee you that there's a lot of,
Well, it might
and it-
run, but it ain't right. Just because it works doesn't mean it's right.
I think that's the definition of it being right, is it does work.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not just me, it's
No,
what-
if it works, it's right.
Oh,
That's your
I
programming.
can write some code that'll work until it don't.
yeah,
Does
but-
that
All that
mean
old
that it
stuff's
was
all
right?
good enough.
All right, it's after 8. It's time for the bar.
okay.
Okay.
I-
So
I agree with that.
we can look at it downstairs rather than you have to break your neck and hurt it and stuff like that. So, hey, thanks for watching.
Bye-bye.
Remember, Jeff next month with KBM.
You recorded that?
KBM.
I never finished the outro. Bye.
Jeff,